based on a true story.
Until the wonderful people like us introduced vaccinations to Africa, the African children basically were autism-free.
Multiple overseas media outlets have reported on the fact that polio vaccines linked to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and his Gavi Alliance have on record caused nearly 48,000 children in India to suffer neurological damage and become permanently paralyzed. Most recently, over 50 African children from Chad also began convulsing after receiving a Gates Foundation-funded meningitis vaccine.
We believe unbelievable progress can be made, both inventing new vaccines and making sure they get out to all the children who need them.
Mercury-containing vaccines may help, not harm kids, according to 2 new studies in the journal Pediatrics. There have been widespread concerns that mercury-based preservatives in vaccines might impair the neurological development of children. These new studies suggest that the opposite, that the preservatives may actually be associated with improved behavior and mental performance.
I sit in darkness and I watch my daughter sleep. My beating heart's the only sound. She is so good and kind. She's always on my mind. The only moments that I keep. She hasn't looked at me or heard a word I said. The flame of life's no longer there. I'd give up everything if I could hear her sing. If God would take my life instead. She was a healthy child. She sang and danced and smiled. She called me daddy till that day. I'm all I have to blame. The outcome's all the same. Though she's so close, she's far away. I had some doubts about the science they proclaim. They reassured me it's the law. They said they know what's right. I shouldn't try to fight. I can't ignore that fatal flaw. I told him that we'd better come another day. I had to ease what's on my mind. He wouldn't hear of it, nothing to fear from it. He said, can I afford to be so blind? I said we had to go. He said that I should know. He only had to make one call. He said I was unfit. My daughter needed it. They'd take my child and that was all. I sit in darkness and I watch my daughter sleep.
Well, that is by far the saddest song I've ever written. I wrote that about 15, maybe 17 years ago, actually. It was part of a film I did called The Conspiracy Project, which had 17 of my songs. It was basically a documentary in song. And this was written about a jab, about jabs in general, and how the increase in jabs towards newborns was somehow coincidence with the phenomenal rise in autism. And I'd like to clear up something right here. This is not about my personal story. I actually don't have kids. This was something I read on the internet, which is a true story. And after I posted this song, I started getting a lot of emails from people who have had similar stories. And bringing it up to present time, our friends at the FDA and Big Pharma have approved the current pandemic jab for 5-year-olds, which makes no sense at all since they're not even at risk, even if they get this particular pandemic disease. So welcome to Uncle Neal's Neighborhood, episode 16. I am your host, Uncle Neal, a.k.a. Neal Fox. I've been away for a few weeks because I decided to write a new song. It's called A Message from Shanghai. I guess you can probably guess what it's about if you're up on anything that's going on in the world. But for now, let's get to the most important headline of today. The UN has confirmed the Great Reset. Yeah, that's right. They're partnering up with the World Economic Forum, and they're about to take over your constitution. They're about to end your country's sovereignty. Let me give you a little bit of this.
This afternoon, the Secretary General and Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, will witness the signing of a memorandum of understanding on a strategic partnership between the UN and the World Economic Forum, which outlines areas of cooperation to deepen engagement between the two institutions and to jointly accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda.
Well, I guess the corporate news are going to have to start revising the way they call this thing. It's no longer a conspiracy theory. It's a fact, a conspiracy fact. Let me read you this article from The Defender. The World Health Organization has started drafting a global pandemic treaty on pandemic preparedness that would grant it absolute power over global biosecurity, such as the power to implement digital identities, vaccine passports, mandatory vaccinations, travel restrictions, standardized medical care, and more. COVID-19, while potentially deadly to certain vulnerable groups, simply isn't a valid justification for handing over more power to the WHO, especially in light of its many inexplicable, quote-unquote, mistakes in this and previous pandemics. It goes on. As just one example, the WHO didn't publicly admit SARS-CoV-2 was airborne until the end of December 2021. Yet scientists knew the virus was airborne within weeks of the pandemic being declared. The WHO also ignored early advice about airborne transmission. So it seems clear that the effort to now hand over more power to the WHO is about something other than being the most qualified to make health decisions that benefit and protect everyone. With this treaty in place, all member nations will be subject to the WHO's dictates. Now think about that for a second. The article continues. If the WHO says every person on the planet needs to have a vaccine passport and digital identity to ensure vaccination compliance, then that's what every country will be forced to implement, even if the people have rejected such plans using local democratic processes. Listen to that carefully. They're talking about forcing other countries. Your constitution, who you voted for, what your laws are in your particular country don't mean crap. They will have full control over what gets implemented. The article continues. Under the guise of global pandemic, the WHO, the World Economic Forum, and all its installed leaders in government, and there's quite a few, and private businesses were able to roll out a plan that had already been decades in the making. The pandemic was a perfect cover. They intend to eliminate individualized medicine and provide blanket rulings for how a given threat is addressed. Without a doubt, this can only result in needless suffering, not to mention the loss of individual freedom. Another clue about what the WHO intends to do with more power comes from its primary funder, Bill Gates. Gates recently announced he's building a pandemic response team for the WHO, which he would like to be called Global Epidemic Response and Mobilization, or GERM Team. That figures. This team will be made up of thousands of disease experts, you should put that one in quotes, under WHO's purview, and will monitor nations and decide when they need to suspend civil liberties, force populations to wear masks, and close borders. I just love the way they use these words. They're going to decide when to suspend civil liberties and force populations. Of course, Bill Gates is also the largest funder of the WHO. This and other relationships speak volumes about the corruption still ruling the WHO. At the end of the day, Gates is basically paying the WHO to dictate to the world what they must do to make Gates a ton of money. That last part was from a conservative MP, Leslyn Lewis from Canada. He continues, of even more concern, if this treaty is enshrined, the WHO would be in full control over what gets called a pandemic. They could dictate how our doctors can respond, which drugs can and can't be used, or which vaccines are approved. We would end up with a one-size-fits-all approach for the entire world. A one-size-fits-all response to a health crisis doesn't even work across Canada, let alone the entire globe, unquote. And now here's the real kicker. The next question, then, is how the WHO and Bill Gates would be able to monitor every individual in every country to determine whether enough people are sick to justify locking down a region. The treaty includes 190 countries and would be legally binding. The treaty defines and classifies what is considered a pandemic, and this could consist of broad classifications, including an increase in cancers, heart conditions, strokes, etc. If a pandemic is declared, the WHO takes over the global health management of the pandemic. To this end, the WHO has contracted German-based Deutsche Telekom subsidiary T-Systems to develop a global vaccine passport system with plans to link every person on the planet, catch this, with plans to link every person on the planet to a QR code digital ID. Thus, there will be one pandemic treaty, one germ team, one global vaccine passport, and one World Health Organization to monitor every person on the planet. Unquote. Sounds a little bit like communist China, doesn't it? And as of this recording, which is May 18th, 2022, there's a meeting going on next week at the WHO where they're going to try to implement something across the entire world, which is basically one world government with the WHO at the very top, along with the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab. I love saying that. Basically, this will override anybody's constitution. I just know old country Joe Biden is going to be all for this. I think this bears repeating.
This afternoon, the Secretary General and Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, will witness the signing of a memorandum of understanding on a strategic partnership between the UN and the World Economic Forum, which outlines areas of cooperation to deepen engagement between the two institutions and to jointly accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda.
And now a word from our sponsor, me. By now, a lot of you have seen this viral video coming out of Shanghai. It was taken at night, and you could hear people screaming out of their windows. They were basically being starved. They were locked away for well over a month. Not enough food, not being allowed to come out of their houses. I thought it needed a song to really get the point across to many, many more people. So I took a few weeks off and I wrote the song. It's going to be released on the 10th of June, and I'm going to do a premiere on YouTube of the new video on June 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern. I hope you can come there and join me and hear the song and discuss it. I'll be there in the chat room. It's a really important issue. It's not just something that's affecting the Chinese. This is something that's starting to be implemented all over the world. It ties right in with what the World Economic Forum and the UN are trying to do. They're going to have social credit systems implemented so they can track down your every move. Here's a little taste.
We will not bend, we won't comply. We heard the message from Shanghai, and from this day we all are free. From this day we all are free. Raise the banner high for all to see. We will not bend, we won't comply.
I hope you join me for the premiere of the video, the music video. It'll be on youtube.com/Neal Fox. That's Neal with an A if you don't know by now. And it'll be June 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Be there a couple of minutes early. I'll be in the chat room. It'll be fun. So, as always, it comes down to what are we going to do about it? If we don't do it, nobody else will. Here's another song from The Conspiracy Project.
Sitting here watching how we fell from grace, the half-baked remnants of the human race, soon to be forgotten without a sign or trace. Another beer'll help me erase. Still I should have done something. Yeah, I should have done something. We've come so far, you don't know who you can trust. What can anybody do to stop the downward thrust? It's gotten way too big, it's heading back to dust. They tell me I should learn to adjust. Still I got to do something. Yeah, I got to do something. It could have been something. It could have been really, really something. It could have been. The bad boys only get a slap on the wrist. The whistleblower's sentenced with an iron fist. I'm crying as I live another Schindler's List. My orders were to cease and desist. Still I should have done something. Yeah, I should have done something. That the news is 98% fake. We may have long passed the point of make or break. And maybe I'm too scared to be so wide awake. And maybe that's my biggest mistake. Still I should have done something. Yeah, I should have done something. It could have been something. I should have done something. It could have been really, really something. It could have been. It could have been paradise. It could have been something. I should have done something. It could have been really, really something. It could have been. It could have been paradise. It could have been something. It could have been really, really something. It could have been. I should have done something. It could have been paradise. It could have been something. I should have done something. Really, really something. It could have been. It could have been paradise. It could have been something.
Well, that's another wrap-up. of Uncle Neal's Neighborhood, episode 16. I'm glad you came. I hope you share it with some friends. Hope you check out my website, therealnealfox.com. I've got merch over there. You can find out more stuff about me and have a good time. You could also check out my YouTube channel and subscribe and like it and all that kind of stuff. It's youtube.com/Neal Fox. Also on rumble.com/Neal Fox. And if you really want to help me out, if you like what I'm doing, become a patron. It's at patreon.com/Neal Fox. Wow, a lot of slashing of Neal Fox around here. So remember, if you're feeling a little down, a little depressed, go out and find someone who needs a little help. Helping them is the best way to help yourself. Love you guys. See ya.